Trzymaj się.
Out on the open water, disaster doesn't knock first. 1 second, everything feels calm. The next, steel monsters are colliding, sirens are screaming, and crews are running for their lives. Massive ships drift out of control, towering waves slam into helpless vessels, and a single mistake can unleash chaos in seconds. These are not dramatized scenes. They are real moments captured on camera, where routine voyages suddenly spiral into terrifying, heart-stopping disasters. And when the ocean decides to turn against you, there is nowhere to run. MV Express Pearl, the explosion that turned the ocean into a disaster 2021. What began as a routine voyage quickly spiraled into one of the most shocking maritime disasters caught on camera. On May 25, 2021, the container ship MV Express Pearl was sailing off the coast of Sri Lanka when something went terribly wrong. Without warning, thick black smoke began pouring from the vessel. Within minutes, flames erupted across the deck, turning the massive cargo ship into a floating inferno. Crew members suddenly found themselves racing against time. Containers filled with hazardous chemicals and cargo were now sitting above a rapidly spreading fire. Each explosion echoed across the water like thunder, sending shockwaves through the ship as the blaze intensified. The situation was becoming uncontrollable. Despite the chaos and the growing risk of a catastrophic blast, the crew acted fast. One by one, all 25 crew members were evacuated from the vessel, escaping what could have easily become a deadly tragedy. But the danger didn't end there. As the fire raged for days, the burning ship began spilling debris and chemicals into the sea, triggering a massive environmental crisis along Sri Lanka's coastline. What started as a small onboard fire had escalated into an international disaster. The haunting images of MV Express Pearl, engulfed in flames, served as a chilling reminder out at sea. Even the most advanced ships can become ticking time bombs in a matter of minutes. And when disaster strikes, the ocean offers no mercy. Viking Sky. When a luxury cruise turned into a fight for survival 2019. For the passengers aboard the luxury cruise ship Viking Sky, it was supposed to be a peaceful journey along Norway's dramatic coastline. Instead, it became a terrifying battle against one of the most dangerous stretches of ocean in the region. Without warning, powerful waves began slamming into the massive ship as fierce winds swept across the sea. Then the unthinkable happened. One by one, the ship's engines failed. Suddenly, the enormous cruise liner was drifting helplessly toward jagged rocks along the coast. Inside the ship, panic spread quickly. Furniture slid across the floors as violent waves tilted the vessel from side to side. Passengers grabbed onto railings, walls, anything they could hold, as the ship lurched unpredictably in the raging sea. With hundreds of lives at stake, a dramatic rescue operation began. Helicopters hovered above the struggling ship, lowering rescue lines through the storm, while terrified passengers waited their turn to be lifted into the air. Every minute counted. One wrong wave, one wrong movement, and the Viking Sky could have smashed into the rocks below. What started as a luxury cruise had suddenly become a desperate rout against the ocean itself, proving once again that no ship, no matter how large or advanced, is ever truly safe from the fury of the sea. Queen Mary, when a giant ship broke free. Harbors are supposed to be the safest places for ships. Calm waters controlled movements and experienced crews guiding every step. But sometimes, even in the safety of a port, things can spiral out of control in seconds. That's exactly what happened when powerful gusts of wind suddenly struck the massive Queen Mary while it was docked. At first, the ship appeared secure, held tightly in place by thick mooring lines connecting it to the harbor. But the ocean had other plans. One violent gust after another slammed into the vessel, pushing against the enormous hull like an invisible force. The tension on the mooring lines grew rapidly, until suddenly they snapped. With the lines broken, the giant ship began drifting helplessly away from the dock. For a moment, it looked like the vessel had become a floating giant, with no leash, slowly moving under the power of wind and current alone. Crew members scrambled to regain control as the massive ship threatened nearby structures and vessels in the harbor. Onlookers watched in disbelief as the situation unfolded, realizing just how quickly a routine docking could transform into a dangerous maritime emergency. It was a chilling reminder that even when ships appear secure, the ocean is always in control, and it only takes one powerful gust to turn calm waters into chaos. Milano Bridge. The moment a giant ship brought down a crane. At a busy port, everything runs on precision. Massive cranes move containers with surgical accuracy, and enormous cargo ships glide slowly into position. But when even a small miscalculation happens, the results can be catastrophic. That's exactly what unfolded when the container ship Milano Bridge approached the dock during what should have been a routine maneuver. The vessel was enormous, towering above the port infrastructure like a floating skyscraper. As it moved closer to the terminal, something went terribly wrong. Instead of stopping safely alongside the pier, the ship continued drifting forward. Workers nearby suddenly realized the danger. Within seconds, the massive bow of the ship slammed directly into a towering port crane. The impact was brutal. For a split second, the giant metal structure seemed to hold. Then the entire crane began to twist and collapse. Steel beams crumpled like paper as the crane crashed down in a dramatic cascade of metal, sending debris crashing toward the dock and containers below. Witnesses watched in shock as the enormous structure folded and fell, unable to withstand the force of the collision. Miraculously, no lives were lost. But the images of the Milano Bridge crushing the crane became a chilling reminder of how quickly things can go wrong in the world of shipping, where machines weighing thousands of tons leave absolutely no room for error. Ocean love. When a ship suddenly lost control. In busy shipping lanes, control is everything. Every movement is calculated, every turn carefully timed. But when something goes wrong out there, events can spiral into chaos faster than anyone expects. That's exactly what witnesses saw when the cargo vessel Ocean Love suddenly began drifting out of control near the busy waters around Singapore. At first, it looked like a normal maneuver. The ship slowly changed direction as it moved through the harbor traffic. Then things started to look strange. Instead of correcting its course, the massive vessel continued veering offline. Slowly at first, then unmistakably. Onlookers quickly realized the ship wasn't responding the way it should. The enormous cargo ship kept sliding sideways through the water like a giant piece of steel with no steering. Nearby vessels remained anchored, unable to move out of the way fast enough. Within moments, the inevitable happened. The uncontrolled ship slammed into a nearby anchored vessel, the heavy hulls grinding together with a thunderous impact. Metal echoed across the harbor as the ships collided, leaving stunned witnesses watching the chaos unfold. Fortunately, no one was injured in the incident. But the footage quickly spread online, showing just how terrifying it can be when a ship weighing thousands of tons suddenly loses control. Because on the water, once momentum takes over, stopping a giant like that is almost impossible. USS Detroit. a launch that sent shockwaves through the river. 2014. Ship launch ceremonies are usually moments of pride and celebration. Crowds gather along the riverbanks, cameras ready as a brand new vessel slides into the water for the very first time. But when a warship the size of USS Detroit enters the water, the physics behind that moment can be far more dramatic than people expect. On October 18th, 2014, spectators lined the banks of the Meghna River to witness the launch of the U.S. Navy's 7th Freedom-class combat ship. As the massive hull began sliding down the launch ramp, cheers erupted from the crowd. Then came the moment no one fully anticipated. The instant the enormous warship crashed into the river, it displaced an incredible volume of water. A powerful surge exploded outward from the hull, sending waves racing across the narrow river channel. Nearby tugboats suddenly found themselves caught in the violent turbulence. One small vessel was rocked aggressively as the sudden wall of water rolled through, forcing its crew to react instantly to maintain control. For a brief moment, what was meant to be a ceremonial launch turned into a tense situation on the water. The crowd watched in shock as the tugboat bounced in the churning waves created by the newly launched warship. Thankfully, the crews managed to stabilize the situation quickly, and no one was injured. But the footage became a striking reminder of something many people forget: when thousands of tons of steel suddenly meet the water, even a celebration can create unexpected chaos. USS Cleveland. When a warship launch turned the water violent. 2023. Launching a warship is supposed to be a moment of pride, a carefully planned ceremony where precision meets tradition. But when a vessel the size of USS Cleveland touches the water for the first time, the power released in that single moment can surprise everyone watching. On April 15th, 2023, spectators gathered along the shoreline as the final Freedom-class combat ship prepared to enter the water. Cameras were rolling, people cheering, and the massive gray hull slowly began sliding down the launch ramp toward the river. Then came the impact. The moment the warship slammed into the water, it displaced an enormous wall of water that surged violently across the launch basin. What looked like a controlled ceremony suddenly transformed into a chaotic burst of waves and turbulence. Nearby tugboats positioned to assist the new vessel were suddenly caught in the powerful surge. One of the smaller boats rocked sharply as the unexpected wave rushed toward it, forcing the crew to react instantly to keep control. For a few tense seconds, the water churned like a storm had erupted in the harbor. Spectators gasped as the tugboat bounced in the wake of the newly launched warship. Fortunately, the crew managed to stabilize the situation quickly, and the launch continued without injuries. But the footage captured an unforgettable reminder of the raw force behind these naval giants. Because when thousands of tons of steel crash into the water for the first time, even a perfectly planned ceremony can unleash a moment of pure, uncontrollable power. Danube River collision, when one ship refused to stop. Rivers may look calm on the surface, but for the ships navigating them, there is almost no room for error. Narrow channels, slow currents, and heavy traffic mean every maneuver must be perfectly timed. But on the Danube River, one disturbing incident proved just how quickly things can spiral out of control. Witnesses watched in disbelief as a large Moldova-flagged cargo vessel approached a cruise ship named Rosamea. At first, it looked like the cargo ship was simply passing by in the tight river channel. But something wasn't right. Instead of adjusting its course, the vessel kept drifting closer and closer. Onlookers began shouting warnings as the massive ship continued its approach with alarming confidence. It was almost as if the vessel had no intention of stopping. Then came the inevitable moment. The cargo ship slammed into the cruise vessel with a heavy impact, metal grinding against metal as the ships collided along the crowded river. The sudden crash sent shockwaves through the quiet waterfront, leaving witnesses stunned. What made the situation even more unsettling was the way the cargo ship seemed to continue its path as if nothing had happened, turning what should have been a simple river maneuver into a chain of dangerous moments. Fortunately, no major injuries were reported, but the footage quickly spread online, leaving viewers with a chilling thought. Sometimes the most terrifying accidents aren't caused by storms or waves, just one ship moving when it shouldn't. Port of St. John, a routine entry that turned into disaster 2023. Harbors are designed for control. Ships slow down, crews communicate carefully, and every maneuver is calculated to avoid even the slightest mistake. But sometimes all it takes is a single moment of misjudgment to turn a routine arrival into a costly accident. That's exactly what happened on May 12th, 2023, at the busy port of St. John. A massive cargo ship was approaching the harbor, preparing for what should have been a standard docking procedure. Everything appeared normal at first. The vessel slowly lined up with the port, moving carefully through the narrow approach channel. But then something went wrong. Instead of easing into position, the cargo ship continued forward with too much momentum. Nearby workers and witnesses quickly realized the vessel was moving faster than it should. Within seconds, the situation escalated. The towering cargo ship slammed directly into a barge positioned in the harbor. The impact was loud and violent, sending shockwaves across the dock as the two heavy vessels collided. Metal scraped against metal, and the force of the crash left significant damage to both structures. Workers nearby could only watch as the accident unfolded in real time. What should have been a routine port entry had suddenly turned into a serious maritime incident. The footage of the collision quickly circulated online, raising one critical question: who was really responsible for the mistake that caused it? Because in crowded ports, where massive ships move within meters of each other, even a small error can unleash a chain reaction of destruction. Tafra 3, a split second that put dozens of lives in danger. Out at sea, even a brief moment of distraction can lead to disaster. Ships move slowly, but their massive size means that once something goes wrong, stopping it becomes nearly impossible. And for the people aboard the fishing vessel, Tafra 3, that terrifying reality unfolded in a matter of seconds. What started as a normal day on the water quickly turned into chaos when two vessels suddenly found themselves on a dangerous collision course. At first there was confusion, shouts from the crew, frantic movements on deck, and the growing realization that something was terribly wrong. Then the impact came. The violent collision rocked the fishing vessel, sending shock and panic through everyone on board. With 26 people suddenly caught in the middle of the chaos, the situation became a desperate struggle to regain control of the vessel and prevent something even worse from happening. Authorities quickly launched an investigation into the incident, and the seriousness of the accident led to immediate action. Both the captain and the first officer of Tafra 3 were detained, while officials tried to determine exactly what had gone wrong. The dramatic footage captured the terrifying moments surrounding the crash, screams confusion, and the unmistakable panic that spreads when a vessel realizes it can't avoid impact. Thankfully, the situation did not turn into a deadly tragedy. But the incident left a powerful reminder for everyone who works at sea. Sometimes all it takes is one missed signal, one delayed reaction, or one wrong decision to place dozens of lives in danger. Sulu ferry collision. A docking maneuver gone terribly wrong. Docking a vessel may look simple from the outside. Ships slow down, adjust their position, and glide carefully toward the pier. But behind the scenes, it requires extreme precision. When a captain misjudges even slightly, thousands of tons of steel can turn a routine maneuver into a frightening accident. On November 4th, in the waters of Sulu, southern Philippines, a small passenger ferry was approaching the dock, preparing to complete what should have been a routine docking procedure. Nearby, a massive car carrier was already positioned along the pier. Everything appeared calm at first. Then something went wrong. Instead of easing smoothly into position, the ferry suddenly veered off its intended path. Witnesses watched as the smaller vessel drifted dangerously toward the towering car carrier. Within seconds, the situation became unavoidable. The ferry slammed directly into the side of the enormous transport ship, the impact echoing across the harbor. Compared to the giant car carrier, the ferry looked tiny, but the collision was still powerful enough to send shock through the dock area. Passengers on board were left stunned as the vessels scraped together during the docking attempt gone wrong. Fortunately, the accident did not result in serious injuries, but the footage quickly spread online, capturing the tense moment when a simple harbor maneuver suddenly turned into a maritime scare. Because when ships are operating in tight spaces, even the smallest miscalculation can bring two vessels crashing together in seconds. Meghna River collision, when fog turned the river into a blind trap. Rivers can be just as dangerous as the open ocean, especially when visibility disappears. On December 26th, the busy waters of the Meghna River in Bangladesh became the scene of a terrifying accident that unfolded almost entirely in the dark. That morning, a thick blanket of fog had swallowed the river. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, leaving vessels navigating through a ghostly white haze where shapes appeared only seconds before passing. Somewhere inside that fog, two passenger ferries were moving toward each other, both unaware of how dangerously close they were. Passengers on board could barely see beyond the railings as the ferries pushed forward through the mist. Then suddenly, a dark shape emerged out of the fog. It was already too late. The two vessels slammed head-on with a thunderous crash that echoed across the silent river. The impact jolted passengers violently as the steel hulls collided in the middle of the hidden waterway. Panic spread instantly among the people on board. Screams erupted as crew members rushed to assess the damage and prevent the situation from turning into something far worse. The haunting footage captured the chilling moment when the ferries emerged from the fog, just seconds before impact, leaving almost no time to react. Thankfully, the collision did not result in a major tragedy, but the incident sparked serious concerns about river safety and navigation during low visibility. Because when fog erases the horizon, even experienced crews can find themselves sailing straight into disaster. Sai Kung collision, a calm day that turned violent in seconds. The waters around Sai Kung are usually known for their calm beauty, clear skies, peaceful waves, and boats gliding quietly along the coastline. But on July 18th, that peaceful scene was shattered by a sudden and frightening collision that unfolded in front of stunned witnesses. Two vessels were navigating the busy waters off the coast, moving through what appeared to be a routine path. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The boats maintained their course as they approached one another across the calm surface of the sea. But something wasn't right. Instead of adjusting their direction to avoid each other, the two vessels continued closing the distance at an alarming rate. People watching from nearby boats began to realize what was happening. The ships were on a collision course. Within seconds, the inevitable happened. The vessels slammed into each other with a violent impact that sent shock through both boats. The force of the crash jolted passengers on board, and panic erupted as the reality of the situation set in. Footage from the incident captured the terrifying moment of impact, the sudden realization, the frantic shouts, and the helpless seconds before the crash. 2 passengers were injured in the collision, highlighting just how dangerous these incidents can become, even in seemingly calm conditions. The accident served as a powerful reminder that on the water, danger doesn't always arrive with storms or giant waves. Sometimes, it arrives on a perfectly peaceful day and strikes without warning. Indonesian ferry crash. When a vessel suddenly lost control. Busy harbors leave very little room for mistakes. Ships move carefully through tight spaces, often surrounded by other vessels that are anchored or waiting their turn to dock. In these situations, control is everything. But when a vessel suddenly loses that control, the results can unfold in seconds. That's exactly what happened during a frightening incident involving a passenger ferry in Indonesia. The ferry was maneuvering through the harbor, approaching the docking area, where several vessels were already anchored nearby. At first, everything seemed routine. The ferry moved slowly across the water as passengers remained on board, unaware that anything unusual was about to happen. Then suddenly, the vessel began drifting off course. Instead of adjusting its path, the ferry continued moving forward, heading directly toward a tugboat that was anchored beside another ferry. Witnesses quickly realized something was wrong. The ferry didn't appear to be responding to steering commands. Within moments, the situation became unavoidable. The ferry rammed bow first into the anchored tugboat, the heavy hull crashing into the smaller vessel with a loud impact that echoed through the harbor. Passengers and crew were shaken as the vessels collided, leaving bystanders stunned by how quickly the accident had unfolded.